Sex work, often referred to as the world's oldest profession, has been present since the dawn of civilization. Greetings everyone. Today, we're exploring the intriguing world of the courtesan, the elite prostitutes of France. We'll uncover their rise to prominence, their unique role in society, and the impact they had on culture and fashion. From their origins to their influence on modern art and fashion, we're peeling back the layers of history to reveal the truth about these extraordinary women. If you find this video interesting, please support us by hitting the like button. Now, let's get started. There were different classes of prostitutes, ranging from high-class prostitutes who dealt only with the aristocracy to ordinary citizens. Today's focus, the courtesan, represented the pinnacle of high-class and glamorous prostitution in France, a country that was tolerant of love. The history of sex work is as old as civilization itself. Informally, it is the oldest profession in human history. Since sex drive is one of the three most important human desires, sex workers have been present in every country throughout history. The more the sex industry is regulated, the more it tends to operate in hidden and complex ways within society. No matter how noble and moral it may appear on the surface, sexual desire has nothing to do with status or wealth. Similarly, the Greek hetera were courtesans who served the upper classes. Like the Greek hetera, the courtesan was once a dominant figure in Paris. Originally meaning courtesan, the word courtesan later became used to describe women who provided sexual pleasure and artistic culture for male aristocrats and royalty. Eventually, the name courtesan became a term for prostitute in Europe and beyond. So what exactly was a courtesan? Before the French Revolution, France was a very strongly male-dominated society. This perspective was largely influenced by religious beliefs of the time. The Bible says that Eve, the first woman, committed the original sin. Therefore, women were seen as sinful and lowly beings, not independent personalities, but the property of their husbands. The prevailing belief was that men should dominate and women should obey. It was commonly believed that men's role was to work outside the home, while women were expected to bear children and manage household duties. In France, women were allowed to participate in politics in the 20th century, but in reality, women's economic independence and social activities were nearly impossible until before 1928. The treatment of women who came to the cities in search of work during industrialization was particularly harsh. At that time, the sex ratio in the cities was severely skewed because the workforce was overwhelmingly male. However, the gender imbalance gave women new power. Men had to spend money to court women. They had to show higher status and financial power in order to get a relationship with a woman they liked. The standard of women available for relationships began to change according to status. The class of women became differentiated according to the financial resources of the man they were dating. This eventually came to symbolize the prostitute class in France. The grisette, the lowest class, was derived from women in cheap grey dresses who worked in factories. Facing economic challenges and low social status, many grisettes supplemented their income from factory work or street vending with part-time prostitution. Grisettes mainly dealt with university students studying abroad in the cities. These students needed a woman to do their chores. Grisettes often cohabited with these students, offering both domestic help and sexual relations. If they were not fired, they could settle for a house to live in as well as compensation. Then, one might think that marriage might be possible, but they never married and never became lovers. Unlike the common prostitute, who had relations with numerous men, women also desired to be grisettes, rather than common laborers. At that time, engaging in sex work did not carry the same negative stigma as it does today. However, the lives of grisettes were not always prosperous. Because of her student status, she did not have a lot of money, and there were many poor college students. So there were times when grisette would change partners. Also, although they had a house to live in, they were paid too little, so they worked in factories during the day. Grisette was always desperate to seize the opportunity to rise in status. In larger cities, where opportunities to meet upper-class men were more abundant, many grisettes aspired to become Lorettes. There were also many women who moved to the big cities to become a Lorette from the start. However, although it was possible to become a Lorette, it was very rare for a woman of lower status to become a courtesan, who dealt with the royal family and nobility in the palace. Lorette was a term for prostitutes, who lived near the Lorette Chapel. Even today, the area near Lorette Chapel is a typical Parisian brothel. The French poet Charles Baudelaire wrote that the Lorette were free and vigorous women. They were women who sought a free life and meeting people. They did not have to work in factories like the Grissettes. They lacked the glamour and extravagance of the Courtisanes, but they were able to live on prostitution alone. Lorettes primarily targeted the emerging bourgeoisie and lower-class aristocrats for their services. Also, Lorette was able to live on prostitution alone because she met several men at once. Of course, if a rich man liked her, she had relations only with him, as if she were his lover. However, most of the bourgeoisie and lower-class aristocrats were men who did not have much money to spare. A Lorette who had several clients at the same time often had a private apartment or other business office in order to meet each client in secret. Lorettes were fashion trendsetters of their time and often influenced urban fashion. Therefore, they caught the eye of upper-class men, and if they were lucky, they sometimes became a courtesan. However, even if she met an upper-class man, it was almost impossible for an aristocrat who valued his honor to publicize his relationship with Lorette. This created a distinct status gap between the courtesan and the Lorette. For Lorette, the most important thing was youth. If she was not young, she would not be in demand, and she would have to earn her living working in a factory or cleaning toilets. Today's protagonist, Courtesan, was a high-class prostitute who catered only to the wealthy bourgeoisie, aristocrats, and royalty. She had no need to hide it and was rather proud of it. Members of the upper class often introduced their courtesans to peers, exchanging remarks about their beauty and proficiency in French. They were guaranteed a life of luxury, and in exchange for their financial patronage, they became the lovers of royalty, nobility, and courtesans, providing them with artistic knowledge and education. Because she was dealing with the highest class, the courtesan had to be a woman of talent. Not only in character and beauty, but also in a wide variety of other facets of culture, such as manners, dancing, literature, and playing a musical instrument. Spending much of their time in palatial settings, they were expected to embody perfection in royal etiquette. They wore jewelry and glamorous dresses, and owned luxurious homes, villas, and even castles. The Enlightenment was sweeping Europe at the time. She mingled with Enlightenment activists and intellectuals in cafes and at balls. The educated and cultured courtisanes inspired numerous intellectuals, often featuring in the novels and poems of Enlightenment thinkers. Characters like Madame Blanche in Émile Zola's Nana, Marguerite in Dumas' La Dame Aux, Camélias, and Violetta in the opera La Traviata, were inspired by Marie Duplessis, a renowned courtesan. Although discrimination against women was fierce at the time, the lives of the courtesan were much freer and more luxurious than those of the average man of the time. Since they came from poor families, becoming a courtesan was the highest career advancement for a woman. Their amassed fortunes, rivaling those of the nobility, meant they were not bound to conventional work. In the painting, Olympia, written by Edouard Manet, Courtesan is depicted in a very realistic manner. The woman in the painting is naked and expressionless, but she wears orchids in her hair, pearl earrings in her ears, a black ribbon around her neck, which was fashionable among the courtesan at the time, and a bracelet with a bell on her arm. The black woman and the black cat in Manet's Olympia represent the contradiction of the upper class, who act as intellectuals but patronize prostitutes. Manet's Olympia, while superficially glamorous, subtly critiqued the contradictions and immorality of the upper class of that era. Manet exhibited this work at the Salon of 1865, where it was heavily criticized. However, one might wonder if figures like Courtesan, a courtesan, were merely being exploited. He was a leader in fashion and art at the time, and is credited with having greatly advanced modern Western art and culture. Coco Chanel, the renowned founder of the Chanel brand, was known for her associations with notable artists and is sometimes seen as a modern-day parallel to the Parisian courtesan. The camellia motif, cherished by Chanel, also symbolizes the courtesan. Coco Chanel associated with great artists such as playwright Jean Cocteau, painter Picasso, and composer Igor Stravinsky. It was these patrons, who were also associated with Chanel, who encouraged her dream of becoming a famous designer. When Chanel was arrested on Nazi charges, she was released with the help of her former lover, the Duke of Westminster. It can be said that Courtesan lived a much freer life than the aristocratic women. Although all women of the time yearned for the splendor and freedom of hard work, they must have lived with the fear of being abandoned or having to be constantly watched by men. Since she was essentially a prostitute, I believe that behind her glamorous life was also a repressed part of her life. They were well educated and joined the upper class, but were sometimes criticized as ugly parasites on power and wealth. While the traditional high-class courtesans no longer exist in Europe, their influence persists in various art forms. This was about the glamorous and exclusive prostitutes of Paris, France. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more insightful content. Take care and see you in the next video. Goodbye.